The beginning of the film occurred a year after the events of the first film, where the young boy Christopher befriended Winnie the Pooh and his friends in the 100 Acre Wood. Christopher used to bring them food regularly until he left to attend college, and because of this, the animals began to starve. Then, they started going out and killing people, but Christopher somehow managed to escape from them in return. But at that time, Christopher was blamed for the deaths of all the girls in the jungle, as no animals were found during the investigation. After that, the humans came into the jungle and set the entire forest on fire, causing all the animals to die. But Winnie the Pooh and the rest had gone into hiding, so humans found no evidence of any animals, and all the blame for the deaths was put on Christopher. The police are still investigating Christopher's statement. A week later, 3 girls were calling out for the ghost in their car when suddenly there was a jerk in their car. The girls got quite scared, and then one of them came near the door. Then suddenly, a creature stabs another girl from behind, sighs, and kills her. At that moment, an animal named Owl had arrived, and he broke one girl's hand. Then Winnie the Pooh also arrived. He turned their car around and threw it into the pond, where a girl escaped from there. She was trying to escape, but Pooh approached her and broke her hands and legs, and then he trapped her mouth and killed her on the spot. A girl was still alive, but Owl came to her and finished her right there. On the other side of the story, we see Christopher, who's having nightmares of the events of the first film. He goes to his hypnotherapist, Samantha, and tells her that he's still having terrifying dreams. She tells her that everything will be fine and that he should relax. Then Christopher meets his girlfriend and tells her about the situation he's in. Everyone thinks he's a murderer, but she tells him that people will soon forget everything. She then drops Christopher off at his home, where Frank, his friend, tells him that someone has written "murderer" on his father's car. Christopher then apologizes to his father, and the father says he trusts his son completely, but Christopher was still quite disturbed by these things. On the other side of the jungle, some hunters knew about the animals and had come to hunt them down. In a cave inside a tree, Owl approaches Pooh and says that first, humans destroyed their homes, and now they wander around with guns to hunt them down. Owl blames Christopher for everything, who made them hide inside a cave, but now they need to go out into the jungle and then into the city, especially to take revenge on Christopher. Pooh started thinking about this, and meanwhile, the hunters were advancing. One of them approached Piglet and started attacking him. He shot Piglet and finished him. Then Pooh arrived and killed one of the men, and then he proceeded to eliminate the other hunters one by one. But one hunter had survived, and he headed towards the city in a wounded state. On the other side, Christopher was treating a child in the hospital when his boss called him and said there are a lot of rumors circulating about him in the city, and until the accusations against him are proven wrong, Christopher cannot work in the hospital. Christopher then replied, "No problem," and he left from there. Meanwhile, the injured hunter was brought in, and the nurse said that he had been attacked by some animals in the jungle, or so it seemed. Then Christopher started thinking about this, and then he came home. On the other side, a man was showing birds to his son in the jungle. The child was quite happy until he saw Owl there and got scared and ran away. Owl then took his father away and started cutting pieces of his body and began throwing them into the water. Then Pooh and Owl both watched his body floating in the river from the bridge. Christopher then goes to his therapist, Samantha, again. This time, Samantha was hypnotizing Christopher so that he could remember his childhood, and then Christopher was hypnotized. She asked him to remember the incident from his childhood that affected him the most, and then Christopher remembered that he was playing hide and seek in the jungle with his brother Billy, along with other children. Billy was hiding in a car, and then a man kidnapped him, and Christopher had seen that man too. Christopher remembered this thing and got scared and said he saw a man taking his brother away in front of him, but he couldn't do anything and thinks it's his mistake. Then Samantha tells him not to blame himself because he was just a child back then. On the other side, the police found Pooh's cave and entered it, where they found not only pieces of the bodies of the deceased, but also some corpses. Then, Owl came there and started killing all of them one by one in the most terrifying way possible. Then Christopher came home and tells Kate about the kidnapping of his brother Billy, which he remembered during the therapy session. Later, Christopher was reading about the case of the missing children, and then he found out that other 7 children, like Billy, had been kidnapped and given to a scientist named Arthur, who was experimenting on the children, but all the children inside were killed. The next day, an officer came to meet Christopher. He informs him that animals and people are being killed in the jungle, including his team, who was searching for them. Christopher tells him to take care of himself and that he will find out about this. Then Christopher came back from there and went to a club with Danny and Frank, where preparations for a party were underway. But a girl there said that Christopher's presence wouldn't go well with the people there because everyone in the city considers him a murderer. So Christopher left from there. Later, Christopher met the injured injured man who was in the hospital and asked him if the people who attacked him looked like animals. The man wrote and confirmed that he was correct. Christopher saw Jack outside, who was watching him. Christopher remembered that Jack had kidnapped his brother Billy in childhood, and then he went outside. But by then, Jack had disappeared from there. On the other hand, Frank was taking a bath, and then he found a note outside the house, which led him to follow it and come outside the house. On the other side, Owl came and killed Frank. Then he threw acid on his face and completely disfigured his face. Meanwhile, Christopher followed Jack to his house, and then he confronted him. Jack was quite scared there, and then Christopher asked, "Why did you kidnap my brother?" Then Jack apologizes to him and said he kidnapped the children for Arthur. He used to pay him for that. Arthur experimented on the children by injecting genes of different animals into their bodies, which gave them the regeneration factor so that they never die. But all those experiments failed, and all the children died due to mutations. Then Arthur, along with him, released those children into the jungle. But after a few days, the mutation of regeneration started working inside them, and they came out as half human and half animal. Arthur died, but this saga is still going on. Jack said all of this happened because of him and took his own life. Then Christopher also got scared by this revelation. On the other hand, Danny was putting Rand to sleep when she heard a voice from outside, which was her father who was calling Danny on the phone. Danny and Rand hid there, and they hid the camera at home and looked around everywhere. Then they noticed Pooh at home, who had broken the camera, and Pooh moved forward to find them in the house. But then both of them escaped from there, from the other side, and then they met officers outside. They informed the officers about Pooh. The officers went inside the house, and then Pooh attacked an officer and killed him. His screams were heard outside, and Danny also heard them. On the other hand, Christopher was reading reports from Arthur's house, and then he found out that Pooh, Piglet, and the other animals were all children, and Arthur had experimented on them, which resulted in changes in their bodies. Even after dying, they came back to life, and Billy was actually Winnie the Pooh after mutation. Then Christopher received a call from Danny, who said that Pooh had attacked their house. Danny then tells him that Pooh knew about her, that she's Christopher's girlfriend. He also killed Frank, and maybe he knows about Christopher's family too. Meanwhile, Pooh arrived at Christopher's house. Inside, Alan, Lexi, and Kate were busy with their work, and then Kate felt someone near her. She turned around and saw Pooh. She ran to take the knife, but Pooh came from behind and caught her, stabbing her mouth with a knife, finishing her there. Then Lexi and Alan came downstairs, and Lexi heard Alan's screams, and then Pooh appeared in front of her. After a while, Pooh came to Christopher's room, and he started looking at all his pants and toys. A few hours later, Christopher reached his house, but by then, everyone was already dead, and he was broken with tears. He took a photo of Billy from there and left with it. On the other hand, there was a party going on in a place in the city, and Pooh entered there and killed a boy. Then he went inside and started brutally killing all the young teenagers at the party, one by one. Then Christopher learned about the rampage at the club on the radio, where Pooh and Tiger had appeared and started killing everyone, one by cutting their heads off. A girl is then shown hiding there, and then Tiger came to her and cut her foot with his claws, drinking all her blood. Meanwhile, Christopher had arrived there with a gun, and then a girl told him that Pooh might have gone in the opposite direction. But right then, Tiger appeared in front of Christopher, and Christopher shot him with the gun, injuring him and making him flee. On the other side, Pooh was still killing everyone, and a boy was seen hiding in the generator. Then Pooh increased and killed him there, and then started cutting a girl's head with a saw. Meanwhile, Christopher was running back from the back road, and there Pooh came forward with a chainsaw, ready to fight. Pooh injured Christopher, and then both fled into the jungle. They came across a point where Pooh was about to kill Christopher. Then he remembered that it was the same place where he was left as a child. But after Arthur's mutation, he came out of there, and memories of his childhood started coming back to Pooh. Then Christopher said, "You are my brother Billy, and forgive me for not being able to save you." Then Pooh was about to pick up Christopher to kill him, and right there, Danny arrived, where Pooh was about to put her in the chainsaw to kill her too. And then Christopher came from behind and cut off Pooh's head. Then Christopher and Danny were devastated by what happened. Both of them met with the police outside, and then the officer said that Christopher's sister Lexi was safe. Lexi came and met Christopher, and Christopher was happy to be with his sister Lexi and Danny. They all managed to escape from there safely. Due to the footage of the animals in the city, the police also found out that Christopher hadn't done anything, so he was acquitted and released. That's the end of our movie recap. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more thrilling recaps.